one long story that did the beginning of a novel, and then it turned into a collection of poetry. And then after sitting with it for a while, she realized she had a character in mind. How am I going to bring into conversation with this character other Black women who are also on that journey? And so through a lot of discussion and actually a lot of work on her end in reading, she goes, I think I figured it out. A short story collection. And then, okay, that's going to be a lot of work. What does that look like? And so revisiting the work we did together in short story, she landed on flash fiction. And it turned out to be like an approach. The other thing else I wanted to do, there's so many of us who are crying the oversaturation of podcasts in today's media. Princess has recuperated it and used it as a really cool point of entry into that conversation. It provides a nice intimate framework for the reader. And so what she has done is written a series of short stories that are flash fiction from this multi-perspectives, from the perspective of several different Black women, having intimate conversations with each other. And she does it through the lens of podcasts. So it's a very original work, really cool approach. And I'm super proud of her, and we're excited to hear the presentation. So give it up for Princess.
So, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Princess Jackson, and thank you for being here. So, my senior thesis is titled Off the Record, Strength, Softness, and Survival, and it's a project that blends literary analysis and creative storytelling. So I wanted to explore something that is very personal, yet also very universal amongst Black women, which is what we carry. Whether that be the expectations we have to carry, the masks we have to wear, the struggles we have to carry, the humor that we use to hide our struggles or the pain that we're bearing, and the survival mechanisms we're taught from a very young age. So my main two pieces that I used to help write my creative piece was Sula by Toni Morrison and Oreo by Frank Ross. And I created my own fictional podcast narrative where Black women share their stories about identity, strength, and softness in ways that we usually don't get to hear it. Some other pieces of work that helped me in creating my thesis was a short story I wrote called Gal. And I based this off of a short story by Jamaica Kincaid titled Girl. And some other articles / books that I use, and if anyone wants them, I can send them to you as well. One of them is The Race to Find a Date, which talks about interracial dating. And another one is Examination of Peer Experiences Among Girls with Black / African American Identities, which talks about how negative peer experiences can impact psychological well-being and are a very important part of a girl's upbringing. So, my central claim is that humorous storytelling allow for Black women to speak their truth in spaces that they feel very comfortable in. So we talk a lot about the strong Black woman, but we rarely talk about how exhausting it is to be a strong Black woman and how being a strong Black woman can lead to us kind of hiding our emotions and our feelings. So through both my literary analysis and my own creative work, I argue that when Black women can tell our stories openly, even if we're using humor, sarcasm, little clips or jokes, we can reclaim parts of ourselves that we were told to silence. And this project is about reclaiming our voice, our identity, and our emotional depth. So now I'm going to talk a little bit about why this project matters and why it's very important to me. So this project matters because Black women are often only allowed to show only certain parts of themselves, parts that society thinks that they should show. We're allowed to be strong, we're allowed to be resilient, we're allowed to show our survival skills because we're supposed to survive anything and everything. But God forbid, we show softness, vulnerability, we show confusion, loneliness, or tears. Those parts are the parts that are usually pushed off to the side or pushed in the background. In literature, media, and even in our everyday lives, we're expected to perform strength over performing being human. Humor becomes a way to cope for us. We laugh so we don't have to cry. We make jokes so people don't have to ask if we're okay. And we pretend we're unbothered even if we are showing even the tiniest bit of anxiety or if we're feeling overwhelmed. I wanted to uncover the emotional layers beneath these performances and show how storytelling creates a safe space for truth. So now I'm going to talk a little bit about Sula, one of my main books that I chose to base my creative piece on. So I chose Toni Morrison's Sula because it's one of the most honest portrayals of Black girlhood and Black womanhood in American literature. Morrison doesn't filter Black life through the white gaze. She writes with what she calls invisible ink, meaning she trusts Black readers to understand the truth and understand the text. So, and the gist is basically if someone who's reading it and you're Black, they will get it. Sula explores loneliness, betrayal, being judged by your community, generational trauma, and the limits placed on Black women who do not conform to society. Both Sula and Nell, who are the two main characters in this book, reveal how early in life Black girls learn to adapt, whether they have to shrink themselves, whether they have to harden/toughen themselves, or even whether they have to rebel against their community. These things influence how I built the emotional journeys of the women in my own creative story. Now we'll be talking about the key insights I got from this book. So first, Black girls learn strength, in my personal opinion, at a very, very early age. Nell learns it through silence and obedience, and Sula learns it through chaos, loneliness, and loss. Second, Morrison shows how the community polices Black women's choices. Sula is punished for being unconventional because she doesn't want to have children, she doesn't want to get married at an early age, and because of that, she is kind of shut out by the community and looked at as an outcast. Third, trauma is inherited. Ava, who is Sula's grandmother, Hannah, who is Sula's mother, and Sula herself, they each experience trauma in a different way, but it's all passed down. And finally, Morrison reveals how important friendship is for Black girls. The loss of that friendship affects Nell for her entire life, and I don't want to spoil the book, but if you do end up reading it, you can see why that friendship with Sula was very important, and she ends up very much regretting that she didn't have that friendship with Sula anymore. But because she lost that friendship with Sula, she ended up conforming to the norms and getting married at a very young age to seek respectability from society. These patterns show up in the emotional lives of Black women today, which is why they are very key aspects in my creative piece. Moving on to Fran Ross's Oreo. It's a very much different than Sula by Toni Morrison. It's more satirical and has more humor in it. So while Morrison focuses on emotional depth and trauma, Ross uses humor, and she also uses wordplay to get her point across and to also beat the stereotypes. Oreo, who's the main character, she is biracial, sarcastic, and she's more in control of her own narrative. She kind of knows who she is already. She's the opposite of the tragic Black girl trope. So this book taught me that humor isn't just comedic, it can also be protective, and it can be used as your own personal tool. And this book also helped me solidify that I wanted to use humor in my project because it's so much of Black girl and womanhood's lives, especially since we left their pain and the pressure and struggles. So the key sites from Oreo. Number one is identity is fluid. We do not have to be put in a box, and we do not have to conform to boxes that society tries to put us in. Number two is humor exposes the flaws in racist, sexist, and classist systems. Number three is that language can be and is very powerful. Friend Ross, she switches between African American vernacular language. She also uses Yiddish, which is a Jewish language, a language used by Jewish people in Central and Eastern Europe before the Holocaust. She also uses academic language, and she also uses slang. And number four, most importantly, is that Black women can be as many things as they want to be. They don't have to be just one set thing. They can be smart, strange, brilliant, goofy, all at one time. So these key insights help me create my characters and develop them as well. The women in my narrative, they aren't strong just in one uniform or set way. They each carry their own identities differently, just like Oreo did in the book. So if we were to put Morrison and Ross and talk about them more in a conversation, it will show a full spectrum of Black womanhood. Morrison gives us emotional depth, trauma, and generational memory. Ross gives us humor, satire, and the freedom of language. Both reject stereotypes and refuse to simplify Black women and again put them in just one set box. And both challenge the idea that Black stories should cater to outsiders. Both give Black girls the freedom to feel, to struggle, to fall apart, to laugh, and to rebel if they have to. These elements inspired my structure, tone, and themes for my work. So like Dr. Coleman mentioned, my creative project is written like a podcast series. Zora, who is the narrator and who runs the podcast, interviews 7 Black women from different backgrounds. The conversation feels like a group chat, or like if you were having ladies talk at a salon, or if you're having a conversation at the dinner table with your closest girlfriends. It's supposed to be like a late night heart-to-heart with someone else. Each episode peels back another layer of what Black women hide behind strength, whether it's shame around their hair, fear of failing, fear of being vulnerable with someone else, interracial dating, and more. So the more Zora listens, the more she learns that she too has been hiding behind her strength and hasn't really been showing her own truth. So each woman represents a different emotional truth within Black womanhood. So first is Amani. She's strong, but she's also exhausted. She's tired of being the backbone for everyone. 2 is Monet. She refuses to explain her identity anymore, and she refuses to explain any more about her interracial relationship. Monet is no more explanations. Next is Amani. She's the strong friend who is secretly breaking an inside. 4 is Keisha. She's discovering the politics behind her hair at a very young age. She's a teenager. Next is Nadine. Because of her generational trauma, she doesn't really know how to open up and be vulnerable with others. Next is Camille. She likes everything to be perfect. Everything she does has to be perfect, and she has a huge fear of failure. Next is Maya. She is quiet, but she's very perceptive, and she is a very big observer. And then lastly, we have Zora, who is again a narrator. She hides behind sarcasm until she interviews each of these characters, and it forces her to tell her own truth at the end. So together, these characters show the range and diversity of Black womanhood, not just the stereotypes. So a summary of my major themes includes the emotional burden of being the strong Black woman, to the mask that Black women have to wear daily, friendships, whether it's comforting or it can also be complicated as well, colorism and texturism, identity and belonging to a community, hair being both personal and also very political, interracial dating and being judged from the outside, whether that's from outside your community or also within your own community, perfectionism and Black girlhood, and finally the right to softness, which is essentially just the right to cry, let it all out, and also the right to just show your emotions and your truth with anyone else. So for my craft choices, I chose a podcast structure because this is one of the spaces I feel like where Black women are starting to feel the most safe in to be their true selves. And if you think about it, you know, podcasts, group chats, salons, and kitchen tables, like I talked before, this is where the real conversations can come out and can happen. I mixed humor and vulnerability, and I blended African American vernacular language with academic language as well, just like Fred Ross did. And I use emotional honesty and emotional depth, which was inspired by Toni Morrison. So the episode structure allows for each woman to shine individually while still contributing to Zora's larger emotional arc. So overall, for influence, Morrison gave emotional truth, the complexity of girlhood, the weight of silence, and the relationship between women and community. Fran Ross gave me permission to be bold. She got me more comfortable with playing around with different languages, to use humor as a critique as well, and to create a main character who isn't defined by just trauma. And together they help me build a creative voice that has a combination of being serious, funny, playful, and painful, and messy, and soft. So in conclusion, my thesis argues that Black women deserve full emotional complexity. We deserve stories that don't limit us to just being strong or to our strength. We deserve to be funny, confused, vulnerable, loud, imperfect, quiet, and overall human. Through Morrison and Ross and through the fictional women in my narrative, I show how humor and storytelling become our survival tools. It becomes ways to help us reclaim our identity and release the emotional weight we've been taught to carry alone. This project is a reminder that Black women's stories don't have to be filtered or simplified. They can be honest, layered, and edited, or it's my title, Off the Record. Thank you.
For you, because would you be willing to read a paragraph or two from the
I
narrative?
didn't say the whole thing.
No. Would you be willing to read us just a paragraph or two from the first chapter so people can hear Zora's voice? Because her voice is just so, it's awesome. That's not really a question, but yes.
That's a question?
Yeah,
You willing?
it's a favor.
Yeah, I think this may be something you and Dr. Husinger haven't read yet, because it's part of my revised version.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Ooh, brand new right off the press.
The hallway outside the studio is always colder at night, but tonight the chill feels personal. My backpack hangs heavy on my shoulder, not because of what's inside of it, but because of everything that I won't admit out loud. Earlier this morning, a coworker smiled at me and said, "You're so strong, Zora. I swear nothing ever gets to you." I laughed, I always do. It's muscle memory by now, that polite laugh, tiny nod, in small attempt to look flattered at that compliment instead of exhausted. But on my lunch break, I sat by myself in the bathroom stall and tried to breathe through a tightness in my chest. Strength. People say it's like it's a compliment, but some days it feels like being handed away with no warning and being told, hold this forever. By the time I unlocked the studio door, I already knew what today's episode needed to be about. Not the picture perfect kind of strength people post on Instagram, and not the kind of strength you say out loud so you don't fall apart in front of strangers. I need to talk about the hidden kind, the heavy kind, the kind that eventually ends up cracking. I placed my notebook on my desk, lit my vanilla candle, and let the small flame steady me. Tonight, I was done pretending. Tonight, I wanted to tell the truth.
All right.
I have a question. I remember reading earlier your draft and just thinking just what a smart choice it was to use podcasting, because any sort of medium like that, where the guests are performing, the host is performing, and it gave you a wonderful opportunity then to peel back those masks, either when they're letting the reader in, or even when those masks begin to slip even during the performance. Can you talk a little bit about then your choice to end with an open mic? And is it a different performance? Is it doing something similar? That's my question.
Are you trying to say, is it like a reverse of what Zora's doing to the other?
I'm asking you, what you, as you were making those choices, is the open mic performing the same sort of, I don't use a word performing, is it doing the same sort of work as the podcast, or is it doing something different?
Because I was asking you if that's what you were asking, but that's essentially what I did. Because I remember, I think it was poetry, or maybe we were talking about open mics. Yeah, I think it was. But I kind of think of it as open mics as another safe space, and not just for Black women, but for other people to like lay all their truths out on the table. And it's kind of like a place where other people can feel comfortable with telling others how they truly feel. And again, it's kind of like a tight-knit community, sometimes regardless of race or ethnicity or gender. I feel like it's kind of tight, but you know, for this project specifically, Black women.
So it was delightful because you wouldn't have needed to, because I think the framing was so intriguing. It was such a nice surprise, and I was like, we're going to an open mic? And it works really well, but it's just in terms of pure enjoyment of reading the narrative, it was like, oh, this is nice. So I hope you continue to work on this project and turn it into wherever the spirit may lead you, because it's got some legs.
Yeah, I was because when I was writing it, I was wondering how I was gonna tie it all into Zora and like where I would get her to speak her truth. And I guess I'm not sure if it's because you were talking about open mics and poetry, but I just thought that would be a perfect place because that's kind of one of the only places where everyone from the story can get in the same place. I could have did another podcast episode where it was all of them speaking, but I felt like that would have been too difficult. So it could have, I don't know if it was maybe laziness, but it worked out in my
It was a good creative move because the practicality of getting all of the characters in one space because they all don't know each other.
Yeah.
And the only person they really know in common is Zora.
Zora.
So like having an open mic night brings them into the same space. That's a really cool, good writer move. Good design.
Princess, I'll share that. I've not read this, and while you were talking, I wanted to. And the way that you have framed a lived experience that I, as a reader, could experience and gain some understanding, some empathy building is an amazing contribution for you as a writer. And then to have the cognitive complexity and emotional complexity to establish these different personas and voices that you're representing just gets me as a reader inspired to want to go deeper into those characters because of the way that you're able to frame that so well. It's like a trust building almost from reader to the author that you're establishing. So maybe you can share it with me, because I would like to read it.
My question for you, my dear, is one of the most challenging parts of your story for me was that you weren't just writing about like different Black women's experiences, but different Black women in terms of like life. Like they're at different stages of life, they have different perspectives, they're in different relationships. How did you navigate writing so many different characters? And I think if you were just writing it from Zora's perspective, that would have been easier, but what you did was you actually wrote their perspective and Zora's, how did you do that? How did you juggle that?
If I'm being honest, it's, and I guess unless you're a Black woman, you won't get it. But it's something that I guess for me at least personally, you always have in the back of your mind with different experiences that different Black women go through at different ages. So when I was writing this, I let all those experiences that I've been educated on or like that I've seen. And sometimes you're not directly learning it, but you're seeing it and you're hearing it. So I let that all out on the page. Like, for example, like if it's someone younger that came from me, but if it's someone older, it's stuff that I've seen or maybe heard.
That is awesome.
And I also just want to compliment you on, it is difficult for me as a writer. You have the character that you know is going to drive the narrative, you know the ins and outs of what you're doing with them, and then they have supporting characters, and so often for me they're so flat and kind of indistinguishable. And notice just like immediately into your narrative, you do such a nice job with just little touches of voice, dress, little details, that they're all like unique characters. And like, this is too young to be nailing this at this point. So it's awesome. Really nice job.
Have the feel of the annual conference to have the book publishers come and have the authors give their pitch of their book, right?
Yeah.
So, it felt really good in the way that
Yeah.
you presented that to us at that level. It felt like at that level.
I have a comment more than a question. I'm so blown away in hearing you articulate the amount of theory that you put into your creative piece. So then the question becomes, people don't realize short fiction is harder to write than longer fiction. How did you navigate setting the goal of writing short, condensed, precise pieces as opposed to things that you could kind of meander and maybe that section is a little unneeded, but it gives you room. Like you had restrictions. How did you navigate the restricted nature of short fiction?
I'm a little, okay, from being honest, I'm a little caught off guard about that comment because I found it easier.
You did?
Because when I was writing it, I set it up a little how I set up Gal.
Oh, yeah.
And when I wrote that short piece of work, I found that one of the most easiest things to write, and it could also be because like I had based it off already on a short story, but I found it actually easier to write it that way.
Awesome. I mean, you were clearly saying you are a special writer because short often means harder for people because you don't have as much space. So like there's an economy to it, right? So like you've only got 100 words, every word has to count, and you made every word count. You know what I mean? Like there was no wasted, as far as I could see, there was no wasted space.
I will say I used to find it hard writing like that, or especially like middle school where your teacher would give you a word limit. I wanted to keep writing, but I think it was after taking like your class short stories, because that's where I learned more about shorts, because I didn't really know anything about short stories until I took that class. And when I took that class, I was like, oh, I don't have to write full-on novels. I can write like this. And I think that's when I started finding it easier to write shorter pieces.
Your voice is solid, and you did an excellent job. You guys are also are welcome to ask questions. I'm sure you've heard a lot about this project, so feel free.
I just want to make a comment.
Yes, please.
It was awesome. Not just because that's my granddaughter, but she's as smart as a whip there. But she's always been talented with her gifts as a writer, or she has other talents too that she's not using. But I find that what you said today was a healing.
Mm.
That's where I saw it. You know, when you talked about the black women, the different things, you know, they go through and their identity and all. That's us today, you know. That's us today. And even though, you know, some of us look like we've got it all together, some of us fall in one of those categories that you were talking about. So it's really good if you publish it. I know it will be great, Princess. Just great, honey. That's all grandmother got to say.
I want to comment that I'm also very proud of you because I've been seeing you work hard.
Yes.
Just bouncing ideas back and forth across your room. I'm proud of you.
Yes.
Yeah, we are so proud of you. You knocked it out of the park. Well, we are not going to belabor your question and answer period, but we will ask you to step outside briefly while we deliberate.